Why the $2,000 Trump dividend check story exploded nationwide. Over the past several weeks, a wave of viral posts has swept across Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter, all claiming the same dramatic headline that a brand new $2,000 Trump dividend check could arrive before Christmas. For millions of seniors, families, and fixed income households, this wasn't just another trending topic. It felt like a sudden spark of hope in a year defined by rising costs and financial pressure. And yet, with every new post came new questions, new confusion, and new uncertainty about whether any of this was actually true. As a financial analyst who has spent more than a decade helping seniors navigate complex government programs, I can tell you this. When a story spreads this quickly, it usually means two things. First, people are desperate for clear information. And second, the official messaging has not been communicated in a way that everyday Americans can easily understand. That is exactly what happened here. The entire conversation began when former President Donald Trump released a message stating that he wanted to send out a $2,000 payment per person, which he described as a dividend for low-income and middle-income Americans. What made this announcement so explosive wasn't just the dollar amount, though $2,000 during the holiday season is no small number. It was the structure of the message. Trump framed the payment as something that could be funded by tariff revenue, money he said the United States was already collecting at historic levels. Almost instantly, speculation filled social media. Some users claimed the checks were already approved. Others insisted they were guaranteed to arrive before Christmas. And many seniors, especially those living on Social Security, SSI, SSDI, or VA benefits, were left trying to figure out what was rumor and what was reality. This is where today's breakdown begins. Because to understand what's true, what's possible, and what is pure exaggeration, we need to step back and look at the facts calmly, clearly, and without political noise. In this video series, I'll guide you through what Trump actually said, what the White House confirmed, who could qualify, where the funding might come from, and the realistic timeline seniors should expect, what Trump actually announced and why it triggered nationwide confusion. To understand why the $2,000 dividend check conversation grew so rapidly, we need to look closely at what former President Trump actually said, not what social media posts repeated, not what influencers exaggerated, and not what rumor channels turned into dramatic clickbait. The core of this story comes down to one message Trump posted publicly, a message that was straightforward but quickly spiraled into widespread misunderstanding. In his announcement, Trump stated that he wanted to provide a $2,000 payment per person to low-income and middle-income Americans. He described this payment as a dividend, not a stimulus check, not a tax refund, but a dividend tied to what he called historic levels of revenue coming from tariffs. According to Trump, the United States was collecting so much money from tariffs that it could not only fund these payments but also help reduce the national debt. Now, this is where the confusion began. When people hear the words $2,000 per person, the mind immediately starts calculating. A senior living alone pictures a $2,000 boost. A family of four imagines $8,000. A caretaker supporting an adult dependent sees a lifeline that could transform their monthly budget. And because Trump used the word dividend, many assumed this must already be a structured program, something approved, something scheduled, something imminent. But in reality, the announcement was a proposal, not a finalized federal program. There was no bill, no legal framework, no timeline, and no administrative structure behind it. Only the intention and the public declaration that he wanted it to happen. Yet social media did what social media usually does. It filled in the blanks. A post claiming checks were confirmed went viral. Another claimed checks would be mailed before Christmas. Others insisted seniors on Social Security were already pre-approved. None of those claims were grounded in official information. This is why so many seniors began to feel both hopeful and anxious at the same time. Hopeful because the dollar amount could change their lives, and anxious because the details were unclear. In this analysis, our goal is to replace that confusion with clarity. And to start, we must look at what the White House itself confirmed regarding Trump's proposal. What the White House confirmed: hopeful signals, but no guarantees. Yet, after Trump's announcement triggered a storm of online discussion, the next major turning point came from the White House itself. Reporters wanted clarity, seniors wanted answers, and analysts like myself wanted to understand whether this proposal had real policy backing or was simply an idea in early development. The response from the administration offered both encouragement and caution, a balance that many headlines failed to capture accurately. When asked directly whether Americans should expect the $2,000 dividend payments, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt gave a response that surprised many. She said the administration was committed to making it happen, and that the president's economic and legal teams were already exploring pathways to move the payments forward. For millions of Americans, that phrase felt like the strongest sign of progress so far. But she also added a crucial detail, one that many social media posts conveniently ignored. There is no finalized timeline, no official structure, and no additional details they can release at the moment. In other words, the intention is real, but the execution is still uncertain. This is where it's important to understand how federal programs work. Commitment does not equal approval. Desire does not equal legislation. And even when political leaders publicly support an idea, the process of turning that idea into an actual payment in your bank account involves multiple layers: legal review, congressional approval, administrative logistics, federal budgeting procedures, and system-wide coordination. That's why seniors watching this should take the White House confirmation as a positive sign, not a guarantee. It tells us the idea is alive, being discussed, and not dismissed. But it also reminds us that no program exists yet, not on paper, not in law, and not in the IRS payment pipeline. The other key takeaway is this: the administration did not reject the concept. They didn't say it was unrealistic. They didn't say funding wasn't available. Instead, they acknowledged the complexity and the need for further evaluation. This measured response is typical when a proposal has potential but is still early in development. It signals possibility, not certainty. And for seniors trying to understand where things stand, that distinction is critical. Before we talk about timelines, we must first explore eligibility, because millions of seniors want to know whether they would qualify if this becomes real. Who would qualify for the $2,000 dividend payment? Clear rules, real impact for seniors. Now that we've examined what Trump announced and what the White House confirmed, the next and perhaps most personal question for millions of Americans is this: who would actually qualify for the $2,000 payment if the proposal becomes real? For seniors, disabled individuals, caregivers, and families living on tight budgets, the eligibility rules matter just as much as the payment amount itself. Based on everything Trump has publicly shared, the proposed qualification threshold is surprisingly simple. Any American with an annual income of $100,000 or less would be eligible for the full $2,000 payment. This income-based requirement immediately places a large majority of seniors into the qualifying category. The average Social Security recipient earns far below that limit, and millions of retirees rely exclusively on fixed benefits, making this proposal directly aligned with the people who need relief most. What many seniors find reassuring is that the eligibility does not depend on employment status. You do not need to be working. You do not need wage income. You do not need to file taxes as a full-time earner. Whether you receive Social Security retirement benefits, SSI, SSDI, VA disability compensation, or have little to no income at all, you would almost certainly fall within the qualifying range. And here's an important detail many people overlook: the payment is per person, not per household. That means a retired couple could potentially receive $4,000. A senior caring for an adult dependent could receive additional support. Multi-generational households with multiple eligible adults could see a substantial combined benefit. For many families, this isn't just helpful, it's meaningful. It's the difference between catching up on utility bills, finally covering prescription costs, buying a month's worth of groceries, or simply breathing a little easier in an economy where every dollar feels stretched thinner than ever before. But before anyone gets too far ahead, there's another essential question we must answer: where exactly would the money come from? Because for a proposal of this scale to move forward, the funding source must be realistic, sustainable, and legally approved. Trump says the revenue already exists. Financial experts are examining whether that claim holds up. And in the next section, we'll break down the funding mechanics behind this proposal in clear, simple terms. Is the funding real? Understanding Trump's tariff revenue explanation. Before any nationwide payment can become reality, there's one question that matters above all others: where would the money come from? No federal program can move forward, no matter how popular or promising, without a clear, legally authorized funding source. And this is precisely where Trump's proposal takes a different path from past stimulus programs. In his Truth Social posts and public remarks, Trump repeatedly emphasized that the $2,000 dividend payments would be funded entirely through tariff revenue. To put it simply, Tariffs are fees that companies must pay when they import goods into the United States. These fees go straight to the federal government, and Trump argues that they have generated record-breaking income. According to Trump, the United States brought in $29 billion in a single week from tariffs alone. That number raised eyebrows, stirred debate, and immediately sparked financial analysis. Why? Because estimates suggest that sending $2,000 to all eligible Americans would cost roughly $160 billion. If tariff revenue truly reaches $29 billion weekly, it would take about 5 to 6 weeks to fully cover the cost. From a purely mathematical standpoint, the funding claim appears feasible, but here's what seniors and viewers need to understand. Having revenue is not the same as having authorization to spend it. Federal funds, no matter their source, cannot be distributed without congressional approval, legal structure, and administrative systems to manage the rollout. Tariff revenue may provide a promising starting point, but it is not an automatic green light. Another complication is the variability of tariff income. Tariff collections depend on trade volume, global supply chains, and economic conditions, factors that fluctuate month to month. So while the numbers Trump cited sound impressive, financial experts caution that these figures need consistent verification before long-term guarantees can be made. Still, it's worth noting that using tariff revenue avoids raising taxes, avoids increasing federal debt, and aligns with Trump's long-standing economic strategy of shifting financial pressure onto foreign producers rather than American families. For many households, that framing makes the proposal more politically appealing. But even with potential funding, the next question becomes unavoidable. When would people actually receive the payment? Rumors say Christmas. Analysts say later. Trump himself mentioned a different timeline altogether, and that's exactly what we'll break down in the next section. When would payments actually arrive? Separating reality from holiday rumors. With the funding discussion on the table, the question millions of seniors are asking is simple. When could the $2,000 dividend checks realistically arrive? This is also the part of the conversation that has generated the most misinformation online, especially with social media posts claiming payments will arrive before Christmas or any day now. As comforting as those headlines may sound, they are not grounded in official timelines. Let's start with what Trump himself has said. In recent remarks, he suggested that the payments would likely go out around mid-2025, specifically pointing to June or July as the expected window. This is not speculation. This is the time frame referenced directly by the former president. And when we consider the scale of such a program, that timeline aligns more closely with the reality of federal processing and approval. Next, what do analysts say? Some financial experts hope the payments could come earlier, and a few optimistic voices have pointed to the holiday season. They argue that tariff revenue, if confirmed at the levels Trump described, could support an accelerated rollout. However, even these analysts acknowledge a major obstacle: the administrative process. Even if funding is available now, the infrastructure for distributing tens of millions of payments cannot be assembled overnight. We only need to look back at the 2021 stimulus payments for context. Those checks were deployed through systems already built and tested during the pandemic. Yet, even with a prepared IRS, it still took about 2 weeks after the bill was signed for the first deposits to go out, and that was under emergency conditions with full legislative approval. Today, none of those approval steps are complete. There is no finalized bill, no authorized payment system, and no confirmed distribution date. So while everyone understands why Americans are hoping for a Christmas payout, the truth is far more measured. A holiday payment is extremely unlikely, and mid-2025 remains the most realistic estimate. This may not be the answer many seniors want to hear, especially with rising costs and the holidays approaching, but honest clarity always provides better financial protection than inflated expectations. Now that we've covered the timeline, the next critical topic is political momentum, because surprisingly, there's more bipartisan support behind this idea than many realize. Growing bipartisan interest. Why both parties are paying attention. One of the most unexpected developments in the $2,000 dividend check story is the level of bipartisan interest forming around it. In a political climate where disagreements seem constant and cooperation feels rare, it's notable when lawmakers from opposite sides of the aisle begin aligning, however slightly, on the same idea. And that's exactly what's happening here. Let's start with the Democratic side. Andrew Yang, who built his presidential campaign around the idea of universal basic income, immediately voiced support for Trump's proposal. For Yang, this wasn't surprising. Direct cash payments to Americans have always been central to his economic vision. But the more intriguing endorsement came from Representative Ro Khanna, a Democrat from California, who previously proposed a similar plan: $2,000 monthly payments for Americans earning under $100,000. Although his version was different in structure and frequency, the core concept closely mirrors what Trump is now suggesting. On the Republican side, the support is rooted in the idea that tariff revenue can be repurposed to help American families without raising taxes or increasing the national debt. This argument resonates strongly with conservative economic principles and creates an unusual bridge between fiscal caution and direct financial assistance. What makes this bipartisan interest so significant is not that a bill is guaranteed, far from it. Instead, it shows that the proposal is not automatically doomed by partisan resistance, which is often the biggest obstacle for federal financial programs. When both sides publicly acknowledge that Americans are struggling and that cash relief could provide real support, it signals that the conversation is being taken seriously rather than dismissed as political noise. Still, the bipartisan curiosity comes with its own set of concerns, particularly around inflation. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was asked directly whether $2,000 payments would risk pushing inflation higher, similar to what some critics argued during the pandemic stimulus period. His response was measured, neither endorsing nor rejecting the idea. Instead, he hinted that the payments could work if Americans chose to save rather than spend them immediately, a viewpoint that aligns with longer-term proposals like the Trump accounts for children. This balanced reaction reflects a broader truth. The proposal is gaining traction, but it is still surrounded by debate, and those debates lead us to the next crucial topic: the practical steps seniors should take right now, regardless of what happens in Washington. What seniors should do now. Practical steps to stay safe, prepared, and informed. At this point, we've covered what Trump announced, what the White House confirmed, how eligibility might work, where funding could come from, and when payments might realistically arrive. But there is a far more practical question that seniors need answered today. What should I do right now? Because while proposals develop in Washington, your monthly bills, prescription costs, and daily expenses don't pause. So let's walk through the real actionable steps that can protect you while the nation waits for clarity. The first and most important piece of guidance is this: do not rely on money that has not been approved. It's natural to feel hopeful. $2,000 could make a real difference for millions of seniors. But too many people over the years have made financial decisions based on promised benefits that never materialized. Until Congress approves a final structure and the IRS officially schedules payments, treat this proposal as a possibility, not as income. Keep your budget steady. Avoid taking on new expenses in anticipation of a future check. Second, make sure your information with the IRS is accurate and up to date. If the payments are eventually authorized, they will almost certainly follow the same distribution pathways used for past stimulus checks, meaning direct deposit will be the fastest and most reliable method. If you've moved, changed banks, or haven't filed a tax return recently, now is the time to fix those issues. Even seniors who only receive Social Security, met with no additional income, often need to file a simple tax return to ensure the IRS has current information. Third, be on high alert for scammers. Every time financial relief is mentioned, scammers begin targeting seniors with phone calls, emails, and messages claiming to represent the IRS. They may ask for your Social Security number, bank details, or even demand a processing fee. These attempts are 100% fraudulent. The IRS will never call, text, email, or charge you to receive a federal payment. If someone asks for your personal information, hang up immediately. Finally, remember that existing assistance programs are available right now. SNAP benefits, LIHEAP heating assistance, state-level rebates, medication support programs, and senior tax credits can provide real relief today, not months from now. You deserve support in the present, not just hope for the future. Now that we've covered what to do, our final section will tie everything together and clarify the big picture: what we truly know, what remains uncertain, and what seniors should expect moving forward. The final breakdown: what we know, what we don't, and what seniors should expect next. As we bring this full analysis to a close, it becomes clear that the conversation around the $2,000 Trump dividend check is a mixture of real policy signals, reasonable possibilities, and unresolved uncertainties. For seniors trying to make financial decisions amid rising costs, the most valuable thing you can have right now is clarity, not hype, not rumor, and not wishful thinking. So let's break down the final picture in the simplest, most truthful way possible. Here's what we know for certain. Trump has publicly proposed the $2,000 payments as a dividend for low and middle income Americans. He outlined a funding source, tariff revenue, which he claims is generating billions per week. The White House confirmed they are committed to making it happen, signaling genuine interest at the highest levels of administration. We also know that seniors receiving Social Security, SSI, SSDI, and VA benefits would almost certainly fall under the proposed income threshold. And perhaps most importantly, bipartisan interest is emerging, giving this proposal more momentum than many initially expected. But we must also be equally honest about what we do not know. There is no finalized bill, no congressional approval, no signature, and no official payment system in place. There is no confirmed date for when checks would be distributed. Trump suggested mid-2025, but even that remains a projection, not a locked-in schedule. Funding from tariffs may be mathematically possible, but possibility is not the same thing as legal authorization. This combination of progress and uncertainty means one thing. Seniors should stay informed but remain cautious. Hope is healthy, but financial decisions must be grounded in reality. While the proposal is promising, nothing should be assumed until the government publishes verified details. In the meantime, continue protecting yourself. Keep your IRS information up to date. Be alert for scams. Use existing assistance programs if you need support now. These steps ensure that when official guidance arrives, you are ready and protected. And finally, remember this. No matter how loud the headlines get or how confusing the rumors become, your stability matters. Your financial peace matters. And staying informed is your strongest tool. As analysts, our commitment is to keep bringing you the truth, calmly, clearly, and with your well-being at the center.